Welcome back. It's good to see you all. Hope you're having a great day. And if you're new here, this is a channel where a couple times a week we discuss different books ranging anywhere from psychology and philosophy into fiction, fantasy, all across the board. We discuss different books, share our thoughts on it, and build up a community around the types of things that we're reading. So today we're going to be discussing a book by James Clear. It's a book you've probably heard of. It's called Atomic Habits. And I had to go back and check to see that I hadn't made a video on this book already. It's a really popular book, I think partly because of, for one, I think it just genuinely has a good, approachable cover that catches your attention, and the title, Atomic Habits, is certainly something that intrigues people. I think that particularly in today's age where there are so many distractions readily available, that people really want to ingrain different habits that will help them lead, essentially a healthier and more fulfilled life for themselves. So I understand the success of this book, and beyond that, it's a good book in general, so I would recommend it. Today we're going to go through its contents and touch on some key aspects of the book, and I will be happy at the end of this to hear your thoughts. So a general overview of the book. This book combines psychology, neuroscience, and personal experience from the author James Clear in a way that presents a practical approach to instilling habits into your daily life that you want to have, essentially. And so it has 4 key aspects to generating a habit successfully. That is 1, to make the habit obvious. 2, make it attractive to yourself. 3, make it easy to do. And 4, make it satisfying to pursue as well. So these principles are a foundation of Clear's system for developing habits, including generating good habits, as well as using the inverse of those principles to break bad habits. And it demonstrates that they're not a matter solely of willpower or motivation, but of your environment systems and your own sense of your identity as a person. So he goes through the science of how habits work, explaining the habit loop, which he describes as cue, craving, response, and reward. And he emphasizes the importance of focusing on systems, not goals, arguing from his perspective that our outcomes are a lagging measure of our habits. If we want to achieve meaningful change, we must focus on building better systems rather than observing our outcomes only. Okay? So the best way to start a new habit, according to James Clear, is one of the more practical pieces of advice in this book. And he advocates for 2 specific strategies, such as habit stacking and identity-based habits. So let's talk about habit stacking. Simply put, there are many things that you probably have or do habitually already. A really classic example is brushing your teeth. And even when speaking with patients and trying to get them to take their medication on a regular basis, this works really well if they just need to take it every night or even every morning and night, because people typically brush their teeth at least twice a day, morning and night, is you say, put the medication next to your toothbrush so that when you go through the habit you already have of brushing your teeth, it's right there, it's easy, it's readily available, and it's stacked with your pre-existing habit of brushing your teeth. So that's stab it hacking. It's hacking in a way. It's habit stacking, okay? And then the other part of that, which is to emphasize this importance of identity-based habits. Let's talk about that a little bit. Instead of focusing on what you want to achieve, focus on who you want to become. And if you want to build a habit of running, don't think just of training for a marathon, but he argues, work on perceiving yourself as one who runs. This is a little bit more nuanced and perhaps a little bit more heady, but it is true to an extent that part of developing a habit that's long-lasting is shifting your own perception of yourself, that you are the type of person who does those things. So it's no longer, well, why do I want to do this for the marathon specifically? It's just, I do this because that's who I am. I am a runner, for example. Okay, there's also this idea of the 2-minute rule. And to break this down into simple terms, It's this idea that if you want to start doing something, say reading, very on brand for this channel. If you want to read every day, there may be times where, you know, the day is going by, you haven't read it all that day, you know that your goal is to read every day, but you don't want to sit down for an hour and read. And you keep coming up with excuses to put it off and to procrastinate until it's too late, and then you say, well, I'll just do it tomorrow. Instead, start small by saying, my goal today is I am literally going to grab my book, sit down and read for just 2 minutes, for just 120 seconds. Now, most people can do that. It's hard to, you know, create an excuse as to why you can't sit down and read for 120 seconds. The point is not that you're gonna read for just 2 minutes every day, because it'd be hard to make progress doing that, but it's actually this idea of this energy of activation, that once you sit down and actually start the process of carrying out the new habit you want to instill, that's oftentimes the hardest part. And once you do read for at least 2 minutes, you'll often find that you're reading for much longer than that. So it's kind of this mental trick that, well, I will at least sit down and read for 2 minutes. And if you find that you're too self-aware and that you're just tricking yourself, then maybe literally sit down for that first week and read for 2 minutes a day and make yourself cut off after 2 minutes. And you may even want to keep reading, but just make yourself stop. You're going to at least develop that habit of grabbing your book, sitting down and starting reading. And then you can build up from there, okay? So a couple different approaches to this idea. But I find that people will generally open up their phone because they're just going to scroll a particular app for, you know, just a minute, and they may find that they're stuck in a endless loop for 30 minutes to an hour. So it's kind of the same idea, but for more of a bad habit than a good habit. So you can use this. It is effective. I find that most of the time, and you can think about this in your own life, that when you're trying to start something new, say going to the gym, there's a moment after you have the initial thought of, I should go to the gym, it's time now to go to the gym. There's a moment there where there's an opportunity for your mind to start generating excuses or reasons as to why you shouldn't go today or right now. Different reasons start entering your mind, trying to keep you from actually carrying out that new habit. The brain, parts of it, is built to try to conserve energy. So sometimes it's hard to create lasting change, but you want to short circuit that exact moment. You want to put all these things together in that moment, say it's time to go to the gym, immediately start putting your shoes on and heading out the door. You want to short circuit that and jump right over that entire opportunity for your mind to come up with excuses as to why you shouldn't do the thing. So you want to say, I'm going to the gym, not because of X, Y, and Z, but because I am a person who goes to the gym at 2 p.m. on Tuesdays, for example. You are the type of person who does that. That's reason enough. So when the time comes, you act. There's no thinking about it. You want to jump all the way over that part, because a lot of your energy and your mental anguish even is built into this loop of thoughts of fighting internally between excuse as to why you shouldn't do it and reason why you should, and back and forth. And that's all taking place in your mind. You can just jump over that entire process. Just go straight into the action. You'll find that this is how you really build a long-lasting habit. Okay, we spent some time on that one, but I wanted to go through that example. There's also this idea of the Goldilux Rule. We've talked about this multiple times already on the channel, and this is just his way of depicting this zone of proximal development. If you're unfamiliar with it, real quickly, it's this idea that as you're carrying out some task or working on some project, you want it to be difficult enough to be stimulating so that it's not entirely boring and that you're just zoning out. But you don't want it to be so difficult that it's stressful to the point that you don't want to keep doing it. You want it to be right there, kind of in this Goldilux zone or in the middle, where it's difficult enough, there's enough novelty in the project, you're pushing yourself a little bit beyond your limits, but not so difficult that it's overwhelming. This is where you feel like you get into this zone of proximal development, or you get into the flow state. which is a popular term these days, but where you get into that state where time kind of ceases to exist, you get really wrapped up in the project and you're enjoying yourself as you're working and making progress, okay? So that's this idea of the Goldilux zone. Now, I wanna close with a Jungian perspective. It's not just a Jungian perspective, but this quote is attributed to him often. Jung says, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." I think that rings true and really hits home for a lot of us, myself included at times, that there's this temptation to reap some sort of internal reward just from saying that we're going to do something, from saying that we have some goal. Many of you may have experience with this, or at least experience from knowing someone who's like this. There are people maybe you meet in college that they get all of their reward from saying they're gonna do some difficult thing. As I went through pre-med, for example, there were particular students that would go around talking about how they're pre-med all the time, but you could see they weren't studying hard for their exams and they weren't doing well in their classes. So you could see that they weren't gonna carry it out to its end. But for them, in the meantime, it was all they really wanted, to just enroll in the courses and go around telling everyone that they were pre-med. So they were pretending to be what they said they were going to do, but we could see by watching them that they weren't actually that person. And this applies to whatever your goals are. You want to ask yourself and have that brutal honesty with yourself. Am I really the type of person who does that? And is that self-evident by the fact that I'm doing it? Or am I the type of person that goes around just talking about what I'm gonna do one day, okay? So that's a little bit of brutal honesty, but I think that if you really wanna start, and there's no better time than now to start, if you really want to start the habits that are going to lead you towards, the path that you want in life, or put you on the path that you want to be on in life, then it's good to have that brutal honesty and say, well, am I doing the things that I should do or not? So those are some of the topics included in Atomic Habits. If you haven't read this book, I would recommend it. It's just one of those kind of self-help books that is popular for good reason, because it's just generally good advice. And nothing wrong with reading a book like that. It's something you can come back to and continually remind yourself and kind of do a little self-check-in, So that's Atomic Habits by James Clear. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have anything you'd like to add or any key takeaways you had from the book, I'd love to hear about it down below. That's a big part of what I'm trying to do here, is just build up a community that centers around curiosity and learning. And I would love to get you involved in that. So I appreciate your time watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.